Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another Sunday talk within the Nine-Sided Circle today. I am your host, Noor Kyle,
And I am her faithful sidekick, Mushtaq Ali.
and we want to thank you for joining us, whether you're here live or on the replay. Some of you having joined us twice today, you ambitious ones, you. We are grateful to have you here. And yeah, so try to keep the YouTube spiel brief. Some of you have heard this already today, but one of the best ways you can support us is by supporting our channel on YouTube, of course, so we can reach more people and let them know that it is possible to be awake in this sleeping world. Very challenging, but worthwhile. So, you can subscribe to our channel, of course. You can leave a comment either for us or for someone else in the comments and start a dialogue. You can share our video, like this video, that's
Like
a
our
big
video.
help.
Yes.
Yeah, apparently some people are kind of cranky with us. They make a
Yeah.
habit of that for some reason. Very
Yeah.
strange.
And it seems that the topic that we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks upsets people.
Yeah, I mean, not many, but a,
Good
a
enough. What they don't
consistent
realize
few.
when they hate on our video is that the YouTube algorithm just looks at it and goes, "Oh, another engagement."
Yeah.
So it
Mm.
all works out, but um, we like the positive feedback. Hurts our feelings when people hate us.
The fragile fifis,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, what else? What else have I left out?
You can donate to the Nine-Sided
Yes.
Circle so that we can continue doing this work. We are actually at a point where we have more expenses coming up. Zoom
Zoom
has
renewals,
raised its prices.
blurg.
Yeah, and so there's that. We got to get some new equipment. We got to get some new software. We got to do all of this stuff so we can produce the finest videos on weird Sufi spirituality that the interwebs have ever seen. So
Yes,
donate
we're,
now.
yeah. Or keep going with what we're doing at the very least. These things make that possible. Yes.
Yeah,
So thank you very much to those who have already so kindly donated. It means a lot and it helps a
it really
lot.
does.
Other than that, yeah, if you want to keep in touch with us, join our email list, join our Facebook page and Facebook group. You can find the links to both of those things in the description, along with the donate thing. And you can buy a t shirt if you want. I mean, that's always cool too. And last of all, I think we should get to the topic at hand. Wait, nope. I gotta talk about one on ones,
Yes.
sessions. If you want to do a private session with me or Mushtaq or with both of us, you can reach out to us via email or you can go straight to our Facebook forum, get into that, and then at the top under the featured stuff, you'll be able to find the links to our Calendly and you can book yourself in.
Yeah,
Except for our two on ones. That's you got to email us for that because we don't have a calendar set up for that yet.
that's part of our new expenses, paying for
Yeah,
a better calendar.
working towards that. Yes, that is something we are aspiring to do to make it easier on you guys and us too. But all in due time. So, to the topic at hand, finally. Whew. We are going to be talking about the way of the strangers.
What the heck
And,
is that?
whoa, I don't know, but it does involve learning about one of the great granddaddies of Sufism, doesn't it?
Yeah, our great granddaddy.
Mm hmm. Yes.
Yes, tonight we are going to be working from a poem by Ahmed Yesevi, who is one of the peers of our particular line of Sufism. Um,
Going way, way back.
yeah, like
A
1,000
thousand
years
years.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we are going to use that poem to illustrate how knowledge is hidden in plain sight and how one can extract it if one has the tools. Now, interestingly, and I was just looking this up, back in April of 2019, we did a talk on the Sufi method of reading sacred text. This was a brilliant talk, if I do say myself. It got a whole 30 views because this was when we had first started our channel. There was nobody following us or nothing. But I'm going to put a link to that video in the end part of this one. And so you can go back and review it. It is a method I learned in Turkey for the understanding of sacred text, how to approach a sacred text, how to read it in a way that uh, you can gain the understanding that is hidden there for people who know this. And it's a very useful tool. And this is the tool that we use to glean the knowledge from this particular poem, because this methodology was designed specifically to extract the knowledge hidden in things like the Divan-i-Hikmat, which is Yesevi's only existent book. Divan-i-Hikmat means like the Compendium of Wisdom. And it is a series of statements done in poetic style that the translations that exist of it, there's only a couple of translations into English, and they suck. People try and keep the poetic flow of the language, which you can't do. You cannot make the English sound like the Turkish sounds. You can't make the poetry, and when you do, you warp the language in such a way that it becomes, in some ways, almost meaningless.
So there's really no way to perfectly replicate the rhythm and
Yeah,
all of that.
yeah. If you were reading it in Turkish, you could sing it. And as a matter of fact, in the forum, I will put a link to one of the ghazals of the Divan-i-Hikmat that is being sung in Turkish for you, so you can hear what the originals sound like. But you can't do that with an English translation, and if you try, you lose the meaning.
Mm.
So Noor and I have prepared a translation for you, and this would be our own translation with the help of a lot of internet dictionaries and various things, taking the poem apart word by word and using this method of reading Sufi texts, reading sacred texts to derive the meaning from it, which still needs to be explained, but it is at least clearer to the reader.
Yeah.
And this will give you a glimpse into um, the hidden conversation.
And one thing I want to point out about this particular style of the original poetry, it's couplet style poetry. Originally, it was for love poetry to one's beloved, about longing and sometimes the malaise that comes with being separated. So although, as we'll see, this poem does not explicitly touch on those
Oh, it does in a
motifs and such,
few
yeah, here's the
couplets.
thing
Yeah.
though. That flavor is in there. That
Yeah.
spirit is in there. And that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, you can see an example of that in Rumi. Uh, he wrote a divan that is called Divani Shamsi Tabriz. It's usually just called Divani Shams these days, which would mean the divan of the sun, but it's really Divan-i Shamsi Tabriz, the son of Tabriz, which was Rumi's partner and confidant and mentor and various other things. And he wrote in the Divan style. And instead of working his own name into the last line of the poem, he worked Shams's name into it. That's
And
one of
that's, yeah,
yeah.
that's a traditional custom, is to have one's name as the writer. in those last couplets, but to put the beloved's name there instead is a pretty big statement.
So the first thing we're going to do is I'm just going to read you the poem. Then we are going to look at its meaning. And the poem goes like this. In the name of God, I begin to speak wisdom and scatter pearls and jewels to the seekers. I have weighed the hardships of self-discipline and swallowed the blood. I have opened the second volume of my book of words. I have spoken my words to those who seek the vision. I have united my soul with my soul and embraced my veins. I have stroked the hearts of the poor, the orphans, and the strangers. I have fled from all people who are not brokenhearted. Wherever you see a broken heart, be a salve. If an oppressed person is on the road, be a companion. On the day of judgment, be a confidant at the door of God. I have fled from egoism and selfishness. The prophet asked about the poor, the orphans, the strangers. He ascended to the Mihraj one night and saw the vision. When he returned, he asked about the state of those in need. I followed the footsteps of the strangers. If you are a member of this community, follow the strangers. Listen to whoever speaks verses and hadiths. Be content with whatever sustenance and provision God gives you. Be content and drink the wine of love. The prophet went to Medina and became a stranger. He endured hardship upon hardship in his estrangement. He drew near to God through conscious suffering. He surpassed the highest places by being a stranger. If you are wise, comfort the hearts of the strangers. Go to the ends of the earth and embrace the orphans, like Mustafa. You who worship the world, bow your heads. I bowed my head and became a sea and then overflowed. My Lord opened the door of love for me. He turned me into dust and said, be ready. He rained down upon me the Malamati arrows. I took a spear and tested my heart and chest. Cutting my heart, I opened my tongue. I speak openly. I'm a tyrant to myself. I am a false scholar who reads the Quran but does not act. I spend my poor soul. I have no property. There you have it. What does that mean? Nora, would you copy that and paste it into the chat so people can see it? And we will do this up as a PDF and put it on the forum for you all too. Anybody glean anything from that? By the way, this is the first of the ghazals in the Divan-i-Hikmat.
Could you maybe say a bit about what a Divani means?
A divan is a compendium of poems.
Oh, okay.
Usually done in a particular style. It contains ghazals and the divan style, which is the one that works the name into the poem.
It's gonna take me a minute. I'm doing it piece by piece. It won't let me do the whole thing, so
Bastards.
just hold tight while I get them all in the
Yeah.
chat before people send
Yeah,
messages.
that's okay. We will chat along. What do you think? What did it mean? Did anything leap out at you? There's a couple of things to know. Mustafa is actually one of the names of the prophet. You often hear Muhammad Mustafa. And James has his hand up. Tell us, James.
Well, what leapt out at me, particularly referring to himself as a false scholar, is it how much of this is highlighting the difference between being a conventional religionist, being conventionally religious, and how much of it is actually, burning with that real heart, open, broken heart? That's, I wonder if that was at all relevant. I mean, it seems to be about someone who's talking about direct experience. I think
Yes.
it's as opposed to simply going through the motions. But I found the whole thing kind of overwhelming in a way, so that's all I'm coming away with at the moment.
Fair enough.
Hmm.
Yeah, those last lines, if you don't let them kind of enter into you, they're a little puzzling. I cut my heart, I open my tongue, I speak openly, and then I'm a tyrant to myself. What does that mean, being a tyrant to yourself?
That one I couldn't work out.
Yeah. A tyrant is totally ruthless.
Hmm.
So if I'm a tyrant to myself, that means I do not cut myself any slack. I do not allow myself to be removed from my discipline. I am utterly ruthless in my practice. And on these last two lines, when I get a chance to talk to one of our Turkish students, I'm going to see if I can get some clarity on this, because I'm not entirely sure of the translation as to who it speaks to, but I think it means when it says, I'm a false scholar who reads the Quran but does not act. I spend my poor soul having no property. I think in those cases, he's not speaking, he's speaking to his ego. When he says, I'm a tyrant to myself, these next two lines become more pertinent, because he's looking at the parts of himself that want to draw away from the path, want to draw away from the work. And that's the false scholar who reads the Quran but does not act. And this goes back to the first lines where he's talking about the orphans, the widows, the needy. Because what does the Quran tell us over and over again? It says, take care of those in need. Be kind to the orphans, be kind to the widows, be kind to people who have nothing, be kind to the strangers. We'll get to the image of the stranger again. Ian, you have a thought. Help us out here.
Well, actually, I raised my hand because I was going to make a comment about just what you were talking about.
Yeah, please do.
About the cutting my heart, etc. Because I was going to say, I mean, it seemed very dark, but it's very interesting. Looking back in the transcript and the chat, I think the lead up to that seems to be important.
Yes.
Although I don't know what a melamati arrow is.
Oh, yeah, we have so much to get into. We kind of got ahead of ourselves even.
Yeah, so.
Well, I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay. Thanks,
I don't
Ian.
need to.
Let's start with the first line. Bismillah, in the name of God, I begin to speak wisdom and scatter pearls and jewels to the seekers. That's the whole thrust of this book. This is one of the, where are you? This
There you
is
go.
one of the translations of the Divan-i-Hikmat. It sucks.
It totally sucks. I'm sorry to say, guys. So
Yeah.
we're not saying go out and buy it.
Don't go out and buy it. Just know that it exists and it sucks. But hidden within the words are the frameworks of the path. Hidden within the words of the Divan-i-Hikmat are everything that Ahmet Yesevi can tell us about the work without being there to demonstrate it, is what you could say. So that's his pearls and jewels to the seeker. When he says, I have weighed the hardships of self-discipline and swallowed the blood. Swallowing the blood means that you have worked really so hard that you bit your mouth and you're bleeding in your own mouth. And rather than spitting it out, you swallow it. And it's a euphemism of the time. This next line is very interesting. I have opened the second volume of my book of words. And he uses in Turkish, he's using the word divan for volume.
My second divan.
Yeah. What he is talking about here is moving from what we have described as the lisan al-nafs, the tongue of the ego, to the tongue of the essence. That is a direct reflection of that line. He's saying, this is how you do this. This is how you withdraw the energy from your nafs and allow it to nourish your essence. I have spoken my words to those who seek the vision. What does he mean by seeking the vision? Later on in the poem, he describes exactly what that is, which is the mihraj. The mihraj is the night journey, where the Prophet Muhammad was taken from Medina, first to Jerusalem, and then up to the heavens, where he had the vision. He experienced the 7 levels of the heavens. Notice there's a 7 there. And encountered truths that cannot be spoken of. That's what he refers to, because each of us, every single one of us, has the possibility of making our own mihraj, our own direct confrontation with the divine reality. I have united my soul with my soul and embraced my veins. That's a harder one to describe because let me find the Turkish here. My soul to my soul joining, my veins embracing is the literal translation of that line. And another way of saying that is I have united my nafs with my ruh. I have united my persona with my essence. And I have embraced my veins, meaning I have embodied myself with this.
That feels resonant to
Yeah.
me.
One of the things we know about Hoja Ahmed is that he was into embodiment. One of the reasons that he did not stay in Bukhara with the rest of the Hojas is because he had the specific task given to him by Yusuf Hamedani of propagating the sacred dance, the sacred movement. That was his thing, and that was not the thing of the Persian line of this. I have stroked the hearts of the poor, the orphans, the strangers, and you're going to hear this refrain over and over again. What does it mean to stroke the heart? Think about that. If you stroke a cat, what does that mean?
Well, you're soothing the cat, but also being intimate with it.
Yes, there is a definite sense of intimacy. I have stroked the hearts, I've touched the hearts, I've caressed the hearts of the poor, the orphans, and the strangers. Now, yes, this means people who are poor, children who have no parents, and strangers who have come from someplace else, but it has a deeper meaning as well. Who are the poor? Now, I'm going to point out
The
to you.
Sufis.
Yes, the Sufis are the poor. Exactly. A Sufi is a poor person, and he's going to refer to that over and over again. And in other poems, he just gets right into it. He talks about those in the patched robes, those in the robes of rags, those who have nothing, those who are sustained only by the will of God, on and on along those lines. Who's the orphans?
The prophets.
Yes, the prophets are the orphans, but not just the prophets. Who else are the orphans? Who are the orphans? The prophets are the orphans. Why are prophets orphans? Osama.
I have no idea. This is just that's what came to mind.
Think about what it takes to look at the life of Muhammad. What happened to him? He lost everything by being a prophet. He was one of the most respected people in Mecca. And all of a sudden, he was an outcast. He had nobody, no family. You know, a lot of people didn't want to have anything to do with him anymore, just because he said things like, hey, be nice to each other. Interesting thought. And the strangers. Who are the strangers? This is important for those of us who are on our path, because we are referred to as the nomads, the strangers, the Bedouin. We are the wanderers in the desert, at least metaphorically speaking. Jonathan, you have an idea.
I also have a thought. Can you make me a host, please?
Are you not a host? What's wrong?
Nope.
I'm just blowing it tonight. Where are you? Where is my cow? Where are you? There you are.
Okay, and I'm gonna put the poem in the chat again for people who came late and didn't get the chance to see it. All right, Jonathan.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out who the strangers are. And my idea was that a stranger is someone who doesn't want to become a part of any clan, doesn't want to become identified with any group, doesn't want to, who believes in things, but doesn't want to be rigidly believing anything. They want to be fluid, moving, not moving through life, learning.
Yeah. And that ain't bad, Jonathan. That ain't bad at all. The strangers are the ones who are not part of the system. They exist outside of the system, whatever the system is, whether the system is a village, a country, a kingdom, the world. It has been said that awakening will always cause a certain amount of, what's the word I want? Estrangement from the community. Then the poem goes on the next line. I have fled from all people who are not brokenhearted. That's an important line to this poem. What does that mean? Who are the people who are not brokenhearted? Who are the people who are brokenhearted? Someone said once, what is a Sufi? A Sufi who is one who has had his heart broken into 1,000 pieces, each one a glistening shard upon the ground. And then God comes by and picks those parts up and carefully glues them back together with crazy glue and gives that heart back to the dervish. That's who a Sufi is. What the hell does that even mean? Yes, James.
When you're truly brokenhearted, when you're shattered, your egotistical world has ended, has been shattered.
Absolutely right. Dead on.
Yeah. So that all that's left, in a way, is the divine.
Yes. When your heart is truly broken, you realize that all of these things that you have built up around yourself are just so much dust. And you experience a certain amount of nihilism. And you have the choice of re-solidifying and becoming like bitter or something, or embracing reality. The single most uncomfortable feeling I can think about. Which is why the next line says, wherever you see a broken heart, be a salve. What does that mean? Yes, James.
Well, in the mystical context, whenever you see a broken heart, be a soul. When someone is shattered and perhaps risking that nihilism, and in some way orientate them to the divine as the unconditional, because all the conditions broke when the heart broke. All the conditional supports were knocked out. Is that
That's
in this?
close. It's getting close, yeah.
I can't
When
think of what else.
somebody is truly brokenhearted, they're vulnerable. They're
Yes.
open. They are exposed, whether they know it or not. They can be sitting there, like any of you could be sitting there right now with your heart shattered and putting on the front like, oh, everything's fine. But if you are awake to that, you will see that that person is living with a broken heart. And the only reasonable thing to do when you see that person is to be a comfort to them in any way you can. And it might only be a kind word or just going, I'm here. If if there's some way I can help. It could be anything, but it is what Buber called the I-thou relationship. Essence speaking to essence. So much, so often when we encounter someone who is truly brokenhearted, we want to look away because we can't stand the pain. And this line says, embrace the pain. Embrace the pain of feeling what the other person feels and be a comfort to them.
What is the Turkish word that was used for Sal? For some reason, that line,
Yeah, let me find it here.
It feels like, to me, it felt like Jesus for some reason.
That ain't bad.
You'll know how to pronounce that maybe better than I can.
In my bad Turkish, it is merhem bolu.
I don't speak Turkish, but I understood the first word, marham, which
Yeah.
is kind of like a, yeah, I got it. It's kind of lotion or something like that.
Yeah.
A balm, a lotion, salve,
Yep.
a healing
Something that
substance.
heals and comforts.
Mm-hmm. Offers relief.
Yeah.
Relief of discomfort and pain.
If an oppressed person is on the road, be a companion. Now, what does it mean to be an oppressed person? Because we cannot use just our modern understanding of that word.
Mm.
The Turkish word for an oppressed person is mazlum. I don't know if there's an Arabic cognate to it. I hear people putting their hands up.
Yeah, we
Oh,
got
yeah, it's the same Arabic word.
Yeah.
James and Yusuf have thoughts.
Okay, James, lay it on me.
Well, just following on from before, in this context, would oppression be someone who's oppressed by their worldview, by their unbroken worldview, maybe? Or when you say oppressed, that's what I think, something locking you down.
Mm-hmm.
Or is that not really what's coming through here?
That could be what's coming through. That is not outside of the realm of possibility. There is more to oppression than that, because the thing that will oppress you the most is the world insisting that you be a particular way.
Social ego or
Yeah.
something. And the actual
Remember,
social system.
one of the things that our nafs do is we want reinforcement. Nafs works by agreement. Nafs al-amara works by agreement. We all get together and we agree that something is true. Therefore, it must be. The interesting thing about Islam is that it has found two different ways to completely screw things up. The first way is, if you're a Sunni, you say that the consensus of the community is what's true,
Mm-hmm.
which is to say that 100 idiots are smarter than one idiot.
Kind of,
And if you're a
tyranny of
Shia, you
consensus.
say this one special guy has the truth. Who says that he's a special guy? The special guy does, or the other special guys do. So that's saying one idiot is smarter than 100 idiots. You're screwed either way. So, Yusuf.
Yeah, that's a fairly articulate or accurate way of putting it, a
Yeah,
succinct way of
in
putting it.
some areas that
But
would
I
be
was gonna
killed to
say,
say that.
yeah, it is tough. But well, the issue I think when it comes down to relating to that specifically is that of that weed, which is how this like how you take things from the Quran or how you interpret the original text, and then you deciding who gets, this is what the original text means, and locking it down. But what I was gonna, the thing that came to mind was Zalimun li nafsihi, which is kind of what James was saying of oppressing to himself, or
Yes.
The yeah, oppressing his own, like you were saying, his own worldview. That's kind of what came to mind.
Yeah, and these are two sides of the same coin. Let me see. Joe is the next person. What do you say, Joe?
Well, I mean, you know, you can kind of stack multiple parts of this together, because if you are awake to the reality of your essence or your soul, and you tell someone about it, you could very quickly become a prophet. And when you become a prophet and you tell a lot of people about it, the reaction of society at large is usually pretty negative.
Yeah, there was a guy who wrote a whole book about that.
And then, you know, especially in ancient times, one of the fastest way to become a stranger is to get cast out by your community, because you're saying a lot of stuff that doesn't work for the community.
Yep. And one of the fastest ways to do that is to be a prophet.
Bingo.
Yeah.
And then, you know, when you get cast out of society, you got to hit the road. And, you know, being an oppressed person, I mean, is really just looking at society as being something that is not necessarily friendly toward you or your ideas.
Yep. Okay.
Thanks, Joe.
Adrian, ¿qué pasa?
Well, it reminds me the conversation you guys held some weeks ago, I think, about the internal and external consideration.
Yes. This is part of that same conversation.
And that oppression is, for me at least resonates in that realm as being the external influence coming to try to conform you, or to modulate you, or to oppress you in ways or suppress you, you know, meaning, well, and that in the light of that conversation, to prevent your essence from emerging or developing or manifesting, right?
Yeah, I'd say you're dead on. You're absolutely correct. Kristen.
Hey, me, I feel like the term oppressed person, and then the stranger and the brokenhearted person, they're all kind of pointing at the same experience, which is that experience of, you know, having your heart shattered open, having your ego dismantled, and that can be like very disruptive to your life, and it makes you a stranger in your own life, and it can make you a stranger to people around you, in which case you could be meeting up with some oppression, like people are like, I don't understand who you are anymore, like get out of here, like you're not fitting into the way that we do things anymore. And it can kind of send you on a journey where you like are in search of like understanding how you kind of fit into the world again. Like that heartbreak sends you on a journey. It makes you a stranger to yourself. It makes you a stranger to other people. So I'm like really stuck on the word stranger in this. I find it really interesting, but
It's the pivotal word to the whole poem.
right, yeah. So yeah, just a few thoughts.
Yeah, and you are exactly dead on in what you're saying.
You're pointing to isolation,
Yeah,
too.
which is what happens. When you begin to change, when your heart is opened up, your community, unless you are in a truly intentional community, your community is going to look at you like a blue baboon. They aren't going to want you there anymore because you aren't doing what has always been done. And that can be very upsetting.
Yeah.
So, exactly right. You hit the nail on the head. We have one more person who has put their hand up.
Osama?
Osama.
Yeah. I think it's also to view that line, if an oppressed person is on the road, be a companion, from also from a manifestation level, from like the surface level. What would it look like to be a companion of an oppressed person? And during that time, it may be women that were oppressed.
Mm-hmm.
Still
people
are.
of darker complexion, people, all different kind of people right now, right? So what would it look like on the surface level to be a companion of those who are oppressed in so many ways? So even there's that.
Well, it might even look like going out to the quad of your university and pitching a tent and going, maybe we shouldn't kill these people.
It's that, yeah. You know what I think about? We mentioned, Jesus earlier.
Yes.
And I think about him hanging out with lepers, with sex workers, with people who otherwise folks would not like to be seen in public with.
Tax collectors. Jesus hung out with tax collectors, and those tax collectors were tax collectors for the Romans, not even good Jewish tax collectors. They were Goyim tax collectors.
The man.
They were the man. And tax collectors for the Romans, though they were Jewish, were completely ostracized from the community. And one of the companions of the prophet Jesus, Matthew, what started out life as a tax collector and became the person who most accurately chronicled some of his words, or at least the gospel according to Matthew does. So maybe he did. Adrian, yes.
Prophet and
you need to speak up a little bit.
Let's a little louder. Yeah, the good thing about having our reputation destroyed several times and over again is that either way it doesn't bother you anymore, or you become Trump.
So political tonight, you guys.
Yeah, it's true. Whitney, what do you think?
Just backing up a little bit on the subject of Jesus, when I heard, I have opened the second volume of my book of words, I heard being born again. And then when he he says, I have united my soul with my soul and embraced my veins. I thought of truly being human in the fullest sense, not this sleeping automaton. And then embracing my veins, I think of the blood and the will and just that willingness to open your eyes to what is true. And then, of course, it goes into the oppression and the brokenhearted and just leads down that road.
Yeah. And I would say that your take is very, very accurate. There are so many levels and layers to this. And yeah. So let's look at a couple more lines. On the day of judgment, be a confidant at the door of God. That is the end of one phase of this poem, and the next line is the beginning of the next phase. So think of this. On the day of judgment, be a confidant at the door of God. What does that mean?
A confidant to whom?
Well, I can give you Yusuf. Yes.
Struck me as a very heavy line.
It is.
Because in the Quran it says on the day of judgment is described as a day where everybody's alone, basically.
Yeah.
Like every man for themselves, more or less. Everyone's concerned with their fate at that point, and then so this line of "be a confidant at the day of judgment" is kind of, polar to that, like the idea of being there for somebody else who is also concerned with their eternal fate. That's what struck me, at least. I don't know.
Yeah. I'll give you one example of this. I remember my sheikh once telling me, on the last day, when you're standing before God, I will be there to speak for you. That's pretty heavy.
Yeah.
And we know that the prophet says sometimes, on the last day, I'm going to stand up for you. Or on the last day, I'm going to condemn you because you were an asshole. So there is a little bit of that. And so being a confidant at the door of God is an interesting image. To me, it says, be someone who has worked on themselves enough that you can speak for others as well as yourself. And then the next part goes on to explain how. He says, I have fled from egoism and selfishness. Now, selfishness here is not the selfishness we think of, oh, when I cut a cookie in half for Noor and myself, I'm going to keep the bigger piece and give her the smaller piece. Ian has a question.
This is just going back to the previous
Sure.
stanza. I just wondered if there's any significance to the idea of the door of God.
Could be. What is someone who stands at the sill of a door? If I translate the word dervish, it means standing at the sill of a door in one meaning. Another meaning is a poor person. Has both connotations. So if I stand at a doorway, I'm a dervish. Dervish.
Okay, that's in.
Okay. So I have fled from egoism and selfishness. The selfishness that this talks about is not just being a little bit stingy. It is refusing to see the other. That's what selfishness truly is. When you meet Osama or Kristen or Ian, and you experience them as inwardness, then you're not being selfish. If you experience them as object, you're being selfish. That's what selfish does, is it says, everything out there is an object given to me to play with. To pass from that to develop conscience, which is what this is talking about, says everything that I experience has its own life and meaning, from the smallest insect to the greatest person. The angels, the jinn, they all have meaning. They all have inwardness. And it goes on to say, the prophet asked about the poor, the orphans, the strangers. As he ascended to the Mihraj, Mihraj means the ascension, as he ascended to the ascended, one night he saw the vision. When he returned, he asked about the state of those in need. Think about that. You go up to the highest heavens, you encounter the face of God.
You saw all the shinies that there
Yeah, you
ever
got
were
to
to
talk
see.
with the angels. You did all of this stuff, and you come back and you go, how are the people in need? Are we taking care of them? Are we paying attention to those who need? That's a statement. And again, this reminds me a whole lot of Jesus. You know, when we go to the Sermon on the Mount, when we look at the Beatitudes, you know, we see that message echoed here. I followed the footsteps of the strangers. If you are a member of this community, follow the strangers. So what are the footsteps of the strangers? And what is this community? And why should you follow them?
Yeah, it almost seems paradoxical to be a member of the community, but to follow the strangers who are presumably not part of this community.
It can be paradoxical. When he talks about this community, he's speaking to his students.
Okay.
Now, the story of Ahmed Yesevi is that he was trained under a great Turkish alchemist, Baba Arslan. And when Baba Arslan came to the end of his life, he ordered Ahmed to find this Persian guy and go and take his hand. So Hoja Ahmed traveled from Yasi, where he was living, all the way to Bukhara and found Yusuf Hamadani. Hoja Ahmed was the first of Yusuf Hamadani's Turkish students and the only Turk in his inner circle. So in this case, he was both a stranger and following strangers. He was willing to give up his life in a place that he knew, where he had respect and power, and come and be with people whose language he did not even speak at first, in order to find the truth. And he found the truth. He was Hoja Yusuf's third successor. There were two successors before him. They were fellow students of his, and they lived for a few years and then died, and another one took over and then died. And at that point, he had gone back to Yasi, and he had to be called back from Yasi to Bukhara to take over the teaching of the tariqah until he could raise the next Khalifa, the next sheikh, the next peer of the tariqah, who was the guy who wrote down the 9 principles. And his name was Abd al-Khaliq, with a last name that is nearly unpronounceable to me. But when Hoja Ahmed got him to the point where he could be the sheikh, he left that branch of the tariqah in his hands and then went back to Yasi to finish teaching his students. So this is where the Hojagan broke into 2 streams, one of which were Persian speakers, and eventually led to the creation of the Naqshbandi order, and the other were Turkish speakers. And they became the Yeseviya order, and one of their main branches was the Bektashi, for those of you who are interested in this kind of stuff. But actually, that's neither here nor there. What you need to know is that when he talks about this, he followed the strangers. He followed in the footsteps of Yusuf Hamadani, a Persian man from Hamadan in Iran, who did not speak his language, did not know his customs, did not know how to be a Turk, how to live in a Turkish-speaking world, who spoke Persian and Arabic only. And he followed in his footsteps. And he goes on to say, if you are a member of this community, follow the strangers. Yes, Whitney.
I just love that these past 4 lines are the first 2, when he's fled from egoism and selfishness, internal considering, and then comes and asks about the poor, and the orphans ask about the other. He's externally considering. And then again, when he sees the vision after he ascends, he comes back and asks about others, externally considers. And just that point where you flip from the internal to the external, that is the ascension, is what it's suggesting here. And then following in the footsteps of the strangers, of, the not traditional way of this world. The poor, the orphans, the strangers, people who are not necessarily of this world. I always think about World 48.
Yes, and you are absolutely correct. As a matter of fact, you've seen some subtleties here. And that is very, very cool. So you are dead on.
Yeah, that's a reference to the Gurdjieff work.
Yeah. And we have talked about that in the last couple of talks. So if you didn't quite follow that, go back, watch the last couple of talks. You'll have the background to know exactly what she said. And then you'll go, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
thanks, Whitney.
Yeah. He goes on to say, listen to whoever speaks verses and hadiths. When he says verses, he means specifically verses of the Quran, but it could also mean verses of the Injil and the Torah.
The Gospels.
The Gospels, yeah. Injil is how you say the Gospels in Arabic. I like it better than Gospels. So listen to the verses. So when Jesus, peace and blessings be upon him, says, "Blessed are the peacemakers," who listens to that anymore? You ever notice how everybody just totally gets off on the 10 Commandments and nobody gets off on the Beatitudes? What's up with that? But again, I digress. So, the verses in the Hadiths, the prophetic tradition, and what the prophet said. Mostly, I quote Hadith of Muhammad, like I was a hidden treasure. I quoted that earlier today. Very famous Hadith. And these are things that the prophets say that are not part of the prophetic message and yet can be divinely inspired or coming from an awakened place. Oftentimes coming from absolute exasperation. But we won't get into that tonight either. Be content with whatever sustenance and provision God gives. I became content and drank the wine of love. So what does that mean? Be content with whatever sustenance God gives.
The first thing that came to mind when I heard that was the two stages of the nafs, the content nafs, and I don't know how you translate that. Like the nafs al-radiya, nafs al-mardiya, mardiya, contented soul, and the pleased soul, and the soul that's God is pleased with.
Yes.
And then the second line, I became content and drank the wine of love. It's both of them kind of, that's the image that came to mind.
Yeah. So God gives us sustenance. For instance, Noor and I had a meal tonight before the talk. We wanted to eat beforehand so I wouldn't get really hungry and go, let's quit so I can eat. This has happened before. And it was a simple meal. It was not a special meal at all. It was slightly better than fast food, but not by much. And if I look at that food and go, thank you for this sustenance, and be completely happy with receiving it. I live in a house. It's a middle-class house. It's a nice house. It's not a mansion. If I am constantly grumpy for a mansion, instead of being content with this beautiful place that literally God gave us to live in, living here is a miracle. In ways that we won't go into tonight. But if I accept living here is the miracle, I'm totally content being here. And then I feel blessed. And when I feel that kind of blessing, it opens up the wine of love to me. I look at Noor and our housemate and I'm like, how nice is this? How blessed am I? What a wonderful thing that I have all of this that has literally just been given to me. Kind of weird, huh? Yes, Joe.
One of the first exercises and one of the biggest exercises that positive psychology has people do is a gratitude exercise.
And wisely so.
Yeah, because they have tracked pretty much everyone who's done it on a nightly basis for any period of time over like a few weeks, has had a marked increase in happiness and contentment just from being grateful for the things that they have.
Yeah, and that is a serious part of this. And real gratitude says, I have been gifted with a wonderful place to live, and I'm grateful for that. And it stops there. It doesn't say, but I really wish I had a mansion.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that was, you know, drugs didn't work. Therapy did help to some extent, but when I really pulled myself out of, not myself alone, but as part of the process of pulling myself out of, we're talking decades of depression, it was being willing to taste real gratitude and to intentionally cultivate it instead of shrinking away from it or resisting it and saying, yeah, that's nice, but I don't want to feel good because then I'll be disappointed. It's like, this is here now. I can appreciate it now. I can allow myself to let it in now. A different moment is another thing, but now is the one that matters.
Yeah. So he goes on again to say, and this is a different section now, the prophet went to Medina and became a stranger. He endured hardship upon hardship in his estrangement. He drew near to God through conscious suffering. So we take this triplet and take a look at it. Now, most Westerners don't know much about the history of Islam, but living in Mecca, which is where Islam originated, became absolutely untenable because people objected to this new thing. And so the prophet and his followers fled Mecca and moved to a city called Yathrib, which became known as Medina. And they invited him there. They said, oh, we could use a prophet. Having a prophet would be cool. Come on over. The Meccans tried their best to force people not to go. They wanted to stay and oppress them more. But he made it to Medina, and this started a whole new phase of his life because he was a stranger in a strange land. He was not with his people. He was not with his family in a culture where family is everything.
The tribe, yeah.
Yeah, the
And
tribe
the
is
identity.
the basic unit of identity to the Arabs of that time. And he suffered a lot there, but at the same time, he did amazing things. Medina is where Sufism was born. It's where much of the religion of Islam was formulated into what it was at the Prophet's death. And it was like a whole new chapter in the life of Islam began in Medina. And so here you have these three lines. The prophet went to Medina and became a stranger. He endured hardship upon hardship in his estrangement. He drew near to God through conscious suffering. Now, conscious suffering is what Gurdjieff often, somebody referred to him in the books they wrote about him, it referred to this as intentional suffering. But it is more properly called conscious suffering. We like to say conscious suffering and intentional work. not the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
And we
Yeah.
have reasons for that. And I've had people try and argue with me about that. And I basically tell them, Gurdjieff changed those words in his books so that we could recognize the people who were just blindly following the words and had none of the flavor. But that's just me. Then Hoja Ahmed comes on to say, I surpassed the highest places by being a stranger. If you are wise, comfort the hearts of the strangers. Go to the ends of the earth and embrace the orphans like Mustafa, like the prophet. So here's the next thing, 3 lines. I surpassed the highest places by being a stranger. If you are wise, comfort the hearts of the strangers. Go to the ends of the earth and embrace the orphans, like the prophet. What does that mean? You now know a little bit about his life. You know that he left everything he knew to enter into a world that was strange to him, but it means more than that. Any thoughts, anyone? Don't make me keep rambling on because I'm liable to do that and then we'll be here all night. Kristen, yes.
So maybe like to be a stranger is to know no one, to know nothing, to be completely unfamiliar, and to have like beginner's mind. So
There you go, beginner's mind. Yes, continue, please. Didn't mean to interrupt you. I just got excited.
Oh, yeah, just like, I mean, this reminds me a lot of a quote from the painter Hilma af Klint that I'm a big fan of, and I've committed it to memory, and it's only for those prepared to leave their familiar life behind will life emerge in a new gown of continually expanding beauty and perfection. But in order to attain such a state, it is necessary to achieve stillness of both thought and feeling. And yeah, it's the like, you leave your familiar life behind, you become a stranger. You become a stranger. Like you don't even have to travel, you become a stranger in your own, like in your apartment.
Yeah.
Yeah. You become a stranger to the people around you. Yeah, to walk the path of the stranger is to leave what is known behind. And I think potentially maybe when he's describing following strangers, it's referring to, you know, following other people who have their hearts broken open, who are also seeking, who are also having that experience. Don't follow people who are saying, you know, I have it all figured out. Yeah, like embracing the path of the stranger, which is to just be open and have that sort of beginner's mind and be willing to leave what you believe you know and what you believe to be certain behind in order to possibly level up, I guess, or you know, just have a new experience.
You can say level up here. We're all gamers.
Okay.
Yeah, you are dead on with that. And the thing is, when you encounter the strangers in this context, the ones who have had their hearts broken over, they experience you as subject and you experience them as subject. You experience their essence. And that in itself is in some ways completely miraculous.
I'm also having a thought that, you know, this is a teaching saying strangers reach out to one another.
Yes.
Connect with one another. comfort one another, encourage one another.
Yeah, we all recognize each other. And we all tend to be drawn together in one way or another. And those who don't fit that will wander off. So Cherie had a question or a thought or an answer.
I was thinking about being a stranger is allowing yourself to lean into God more, because you're not relying on your known world to support you financially, mentally, emotionally, to break your heart, to be vulnerable. That's what you're actually doing. So you can't do that when you're leaning on everything you know. So to move out of everything that you do know and make yourself completely soft, without a shell, without armor, that is, you know, strange. And you seek out people who are doing something similar. You become aware of the pain of other people and become sensitive to the feelings of other people. You see things quite differently, and that leaning into God, I think, is important, because I was only just talking about this in the last few days, is that what's the difference between needs and wants? You know, everything you need, you're talking about, you've got your home, you've got a hot shower, you've got people that are good company. What else do you need? You know, the mansion is just detail and a distraction. And so to move out of that and then find that you've got to find a new way of leaning into other people, being a stranger, is what I was thinking about. Am I off mark?
No, you're dead on.
I think this also ties in this idea of embracing the orphans. Like, even if you're not explicitly an orphan, that sense of, as we've been talking about, isolation, of separateness, there's a sense of empathy, as you mentioned, Cherie. A sense of being willing to see that pain, to recognize it, to acknowledge it, to embrace and perhaps not take it away, but to be a balm, to be a salve in the face of it.
Yeah, and that last line of this last triplet, go to the ends of the earth and embrace the orphans, like Mustafa. In this case, the orphans are those who are brokenhearted and yearning, who have become estranged from their community because they know that there is something that they want that the community is not providing. They know that awakeness demands that, in a sense, that you become an orphan, because you cannot wake up your mother or your father. You can't wake up your brothers or your sisters. And so there's a certain amount of alienation that makes you feel sometimes like an orphan. And it's a weird feeling. Myself, I am an orphan. Every member of my family is dead. And sometimes that feels very, very strange. Very weird.
My family's evangelical Christian, and because I'm not following everything that they do, I've been labeled all sorts of things. And the latest one is I'm being selfish because I'm not following all these things. And yet I try to still be part of my family and support and love, and everything that's being thrown at me is still worthwhile work to still be in it. You know what I mean? Like I could easily run away, and what would that do for me? So I actually make a point of still sitting in it. And often when they say things like that, I said, you're just having a bad month. You're just having that. And it's not always about me. I'm a soft target, and whoever's being yelled at, they're the soft target. But that's what it is. And I think when we're strangers and people are hurling stuff at us, and you think, can you sit with what you have been exposed to? And I guess this is me staying here, listening as much as I can nearly every week. And I've learned more about being open-hearted and vulnerable and being still part of the crowd. That's what I've learned in these talks. And so still trying to be supportive of those who are the least loved and the least cared for is a worthwhile thing to do, because everything I need is met.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Adrian
Thanks.
has a thought, and then
Well,
we're
I
gonna
was-
finish this poem.
Yeah, I know Maria had her hand up a while and took it
Yeah.
down. I want to give her the opportunity to chime in if she'd like to.
Sure, just quickly, that poem, the part of the stranger evoked in me a different perspective. I know someone who would fit a lot of the description in that poem. And to me, the stranger is someone who's unknowable, that they're so free and not caught up in ideology or pleasing. They're true to themselves, following whatever that the inner heart, the compass. And so they're unpredictable because their soul may guide them in a completely random direction. And you can't really pin them down. And maybe, and my friend, he's very, very empty, a person of few words. So to me, the stranger is I'm thinking in terms of they're a mystery. They're so empty and free, and then they become that vessel, that flute through which the divine can be known.
Could very well be. Could very well be.
Thank you for that, Maria. Thank you.
Adrian.
Well, very quickly, actually, very similar to what Shiri was talking about, and remembering something Osama said some weeks ago about the Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Actually, that part of the poem, what really evokes to me is a deep sense of empathy. So he first draws all the probations that the prophet had to endure, and then he presents him as being an example, and then presents himself as being the guy that surpassed the highest places by being a stranger too. And if you're wise, comfort the hearts of the strangers. Go to the ends of the earth and embrace the orphans like Mustafa. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And that supreme empathy that is connected. Then when the first time you read it, already like banged me, you know. And then in this reread and then re-chewing it, it reminded me this Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim that also puzzled me and got me very much struck some time ago. And then this Osama conversation a few weeks ago reignited it too. So this most beneficent, most merciful, you know, this mercifulness, no, mercy, or you know, in Spanish the translation would be compasivo, which is compassive. You say compassive, right?
Are you saying compass or?
Oh, compasivo means
compassionate.
Yeah, compassionate.
Okay.
Compassionate. So
I was thinking of compass as in.
No, that's a different thing.
Compassionate.
Also cool, but no, that's groovy.
Yes.
No, but compasivo means to feel together.
Yes.
No,
I
So
like
And
that.
it was
we
that
have
comes
talked
together with failure.
paragraphs on that subject. That's incredibly important to us.
Yeah.
Compassion is one of the highest states you can have.
Hmm.
So let's look at the next few lines. You who worship the world, bow your heads. I bowed my head and became a sea and then overflowed. My Lord opened the door of love for me. He turned me into dust and he said, be ready. So that's a basic instruction to people. You know, if you find yourself being identified with the objects of the world, bow your head, humble yourself.
Mm.
And he's explaining what happened to him when he did that. And this last line, which leads into the next triplet, he turned me into dust and said, be ready.
Ominous.
Yeah. Because after that, it says, he rained down the malamati arrows. We lost somebody. Malamati means the blameworthy. And there is a form of Sufism that comes out of this tradition, or part of this tradition, called the Malamatiya, the blameworthy ones. And the highest level of this is to be completely ordinary. They don't dress in fancy Sufi robes. They don't wear the funny hats. They don't do the spiritual shit.
They don't make any scenes.
Yep, they just hang out and be as quiet as possible. They are the embodiment of the precept Khawat Taranjuman, solitude in the crowd. They are inwardly completely in their practice and outwardly totally normal. And that's what the Malamati arrows mean. It means here's all the blameworthy stuff that you have to deal with. He says, I took a spear and tested my heart and chest. I cut open, cutting my heart, I opened my tongue. I speak openly. I'm a tyrant to myself. We touched on this before, so I don't want to go over it too much more. I opened my tongue. Again, there's that word tongue. The word he uses is the same as in Arabic, the lisan. I speak openly. It means he does not try and hide the truth by using weasel words or protective words. And speaking openly is dangerous. Y'all know that, right? You're Mansur al-Halaj. You realize the ultimate truth of the universe and you speak it. You say, Ana al-Haq. And they kill you. They execute you because you're not allowed to say that. But Hoja Ahmet says, I speak openly, even though he hides all of this stuff in his poems. But it's there for anyone to see if you know how to look.
Osama.
Yeah, these last few lines reminded me of a Rumi poem, or a few lines from one of Rumi's poems, where he says, a lion leaps out of his cage. A man leaps out of his mind. Bravery is delicious madness, not some circumspect, cagey thought, sly and ungiving.
Yep.
These last few lines kind of reminded me of
Totally
that.
relate to that. Yeah.
Yeah. And while they were centuries apart, they're reaching at the same things. Yeah, I think of this as Yesevi kind of turning the mirror on himself.
Yeah. I think that you are correct in that.
And you have these blameworthy arrows raining down, and you're taking a moment instead to say, what do I need to see? What do I need to see in myself?
Yeah, and I realize, folks, that we are taking a long time on this one, but we're almost done.
Almost done.
Almost done.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, the last two lines are, I am a false scholar who reads the Quran but does not act. I spend my poor soul. I have no property, is how he ends this.
Yeah. You know what I'm thinking? Well, first of all, a false scholar, you talk about the Quran, you say all these pretty things about it. Are you living it?
Yeah.
That's what I'm seeing in that line. And then in the last line, I know we've been struggling with this one. As I read it now, it sounds to me like my soul is the only thing I have, and I've been squandering it.
Mm-hmm.
I've been bleeding it dry of the energy it needs to thrive. And so I have nothing. I own nothing because I've squandered it.
And so I'm going to invite you all to go to that very early video of ours on the Sufi method of reading sacred texts. Watch it. It's not terribly long. It's very informative. And learn what you can and apply it to this and other things, and see if you can glean more meaning out of it. And that way it'll get more than 30 views.
And then come back and share what emerges for you, because once we get this posted, it's likely, if you take time to read it again or if you sleep on it, things will come up for you.
Yeah, and I am going to turn this into a PDF, and it will be up on the forum. And if you're not on the forum, you can send us an email and go, oh please send me this PDF, and we will have mercy upon you and send it to you.
Yep.
So that's what we got with this. This is an exercise in understanding sacred text in a way that is a bit different, perhaps, than how other people do it. I don't know. But it relates directly and indirectly to those things that we have talked about now for the last couple weeks, 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So, any last thoughts?
Yes.
Yes, lay it on me.
I love these talks where we're discussing a poem and something of this magnitude, really, because it does feel like it keeps the fire going. When I hear something like this, when I hear these words, it's like, man, like there's a lot of work to be done, like just for myself. Like I'm looking at these melamati arrows at myself, and I'm like, oh my God. Like it's a lot of work. But at the same time, there's this level of thank God, this level of gratitude to be alive and to be like, wait, what? We're doing this? The breath of the most merciful is in us to allow us to do this. So there's that level as well. So thank you. I do enjoy these calls very much because they definitely keep the flame going.
Cool. And for me, I have to say, I am incredibly impressed with everybody's thoughts tonight. Yeah, it goes to, don't let this go to your head, but it goes to the quality of the people who show up here. You guys know, it's not like we have to, reveal the secrets to you. You are finding the secrets yourself, and we're just providing some stuff that points at them.
Strangers offering comfort to one another.
Yes. Y'all are all that.
Mhm.
And so I, for one, am very grateful for each and every one of you, the deep thoughts you put into this, the understanding that you have, and the willingness to share what you understand. And everything everyone said tonight was perfect. But don't let it go to your head.
Yeah, and so many different perspectives, so many different angles on the same poem. That's the magic of poetry. I always say that. And
Yeah.
so
and
many
together we
layers.
describe the elephant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So as always, thank you, thank you.
And check the end screen to this video to find the links to the stuff that we have been talking about, the sacred text talk, and a couple of other things that will be useful. And that's it.
Yep. So I guess we can call it for this week.
Yes.
And we will get together, God willing, next week at the usual time, 6:30 p.m. Pacific time.
And
on
thank
Sunday.
you all for coming. Without you, this would be nothing.
Yeah, it's true.
So,
all right.
Take care.
Brady Bunch mode.
Yep.
Yay. Wave to each other. Wave to everybody watching on the replay. See ya again soon. Bye.